Kiuwan webinar. Today we are going to help you understand the importance of application security testing as it pertains to keeping your products, customers, and intellectual property secure. And we're going to fully analyze the role of AppSec automation within that. Today, most businesses cannot run without applications that allow customers to instantly interact with their business and have access to the critical functions at their fingertips. Customers want apps that perform perfectly every time they're used without issues or delays or inaccessibility, those sorts of things. Web application exploits, on the other side, continue to be the most common form of external attacks. In a recent survey on application security conducted by Forrester Research, 39% of companies reported that they were victims of a data security breach as a result of web application exploits. To improve a company's ability to shield itself, application security must constantly evolve to protect against data breaches and the latest web application threats. Application security can help avoid the potential negative business outcomes and instead focus on what matters. Another recent report by Verizon, the 2020 Data Breach Investigations Report, indicated that cloud-based data is continually a target for cybercrime, with web application attacks doubling to 43% in less than a year. But having an established application security posture can help to prevent the risks of vulnerabilities from third-party code and obsolescence. On the other hand, application security as an active strategy also has its limitations. Code security needs to be fully baked into the development process, and without a completely automated approach, it can be a challenge to regulate security and keep applications, clients, and customers safe. So now we're going to move on to explain the value of application security and AppSec automation for enhancing your security approach. So the agenda for today is as follows. We're going to start by looking at application security at a glance. We're then going to move on to considering some business goals for application security. We're going to look at how to build trust with your clients and with end customers, how to automate SaaS, and then finally, we're going to overview the Kiuwan solution. So let's take a look at AppSec at a glance. Application security testing is designed to protect software applications from external threats throughout the entire application lifecycle. One of the main goals of application security testing is to protect the confidentiality of data within the application. A web application attack is defined as any attempt by a malicious party to infiltrate and compromise the security of a web-based application. Attacks may either target the application itself to gain access to sensitive data, or use the application as a foundation to launch attacks against users and gain their data or payment information. Attackers can use many different paths to get into your applications, but they all have the same ultimate goal of harming your organization. And each of these potential attacks represents a risk that is serious enough to warrant attention. To guard against any vulnerabilities that attackers can exploit, testing all of your applications with basic vulnerability scanning throughout the entire software development lifecycle is an absolute necessity. This timeline encompasses the application lifecycle throughout early requirements, analysis, design, implementation, verification, and maintenance. So another facet of this is how the importance of really just assessing risks. Performing an initial security assessment should always be the first step in improving your company's security. So this would include an application security code review, which is the manual review of source code with the developers to identify code level issues that may enable an attacker to compromise an application, system, or business functionality. And then to identify possible software and security vulnerabilities across all of your web applications, a complete risk assessment should then be performed. A risk assessment can reveal the most valuable IT assets at your company, the probability of an exploit, and the potential impact of a data breach on customers and the company itself. This process is critical because it's necessary to know the value of the information that may be compromised. And then, this in-depth assessment can be performed by an in-house IT or security team. The assessment can then also come from a purchased external security tool that can come into play the moment a security breach is detected. When effective testing methods are used to secure web applications, vulnerabilities in the source code or weaknesses in external software can be detected, remedied, and acted upon before the software is actually deployed. So moving on, we'll next look at the practice of DevSecops. So this is ultimately the incorporation of tools and practices that strengthen a company's capacity to deliver applications and services at high speed. This practice leads to developing and enhancing products at a faster pace than traditional software deployment. It makes sense to develop a security operations process that includes both operational teams and creates security testing methods that can monitor applications on a daily basis. So there are a range of methods that can be used to accomplish the goals of application security testing, but those would really include the ones that are listed here on the slide. So that is dynamic application security testing, or DAST. It improves the detection of gaps and security vulnerabilities by changing the perspective of managers and placing them in the role of an attacker or a hacker. And this focuses on the behavioral testing of applications as a means of identifying security vulnerabilities. Static application security testing, or SAST, is really one of the most important DevSecops practices. By inspecting the static source code of an application locally, vulnerabilities can be identified to reveal any possible weaknesses in the system's internal operations. Software composition analysis is also essential. It manages the use of open source solutions by performing automated scans of an application's code base. You'd also want to focus on runtime application protection, which uses real-time application data to catch and kill attacks as they occur. And then finally, you might look at something like interactive application security testing, which helps to give you a broader range of security visibility, really. But as we mentioned, there's ultimately a significant difference in efficacy between application security and application security automation. So even if you're following all of those processes outlined previously, if it's not automated, you still might be leaving some gaps that could expose you to risk of attack down the line. And it's fair to say that automation in application security is lagging behind automation in many other industries. Automation in physical manufacturing and engineering is a model that has been embraced wholeheartedly. And the concept of automating security in software development and testing is rapidly gaining momentum, and that's definitely a good thing. Automation is a requisite for security leaders that are seeking to empower DevOps teams to focus on their key business objectives while ensuring application development and production environments are protected. Developers also agree that nearly 1/3 of them in a recent Forrester study last year said they plan to implement automated testing, and automated testing tools rank at the top of the list of tools they plan to deploy this year. That was noted by Forrester in its State of Application Security report. They also went on to say that 29% of surveyed global developers said they will implement automated testing, and it tops the list of new tools and techniques that surveyed developers plan to adopt within the next year. So we sort of did a brief overview of app security, providing some insights and a bit of perspective on the importance of it. So now let's move on to some of the business goals that you might be considering in regards to application security. Security leaders really have 4 crucial goals when they are assessing application security. Those would be threat analysis and prioritization, alert accuracy, efficiency and cost, and speed and convenience. But how does this relate to leveraging application security automation? Let's break it down. Starting with the first goal, to improve threat analysis and issue prioritization. So it's really no surprise that automating some application security processes would improve an organization's ability to analyze and prioritize threats and vulnerabilities. The latest cost of a data breach report from the Ponemon Institute and IBM found that organizations without security automation experience breach costs that are 95% higher than breaches at organizations that have fully deployed automation. I think this makes a lot of sense. There would obviously be gaps if you're not consistently testing, and if that is just a manual process. But knowing precisely what security functions you should automate and where to automate can be a challenge. Security-specific tasks most likely to be automated might include incident response, security analytics, and malware investigation. Most organizations without security automation experience breach costs that are 95% higher, as we just mentioned before. So it's really essential to make sure that we're mitigating some of the challenges here to reduce that cost and manage how that might affect your business in in the effect of an attack or something like that. But as a starting point, security leaders really need to consider whether or not a tool requires humans to configure them or to run them. Does it require an expert to interpret or triage the results? And are human experts needed to test those processes? Here, security leaders must identify repeatable low-level tasks that can work in concert with human decision-making to help accelerate incident investigations. And as most security teams know, developers require a completely different application security approach with automation as a core component. And so when it comes to application security, creating a fully automated pipeline from development through testing and production is rapidly becoming not only possible, but essential through the direct integration of tools into the development environment. So moving on to the second business goal for AppSec, improved alert accuracy. So some of the legacy approaches in AppSec have historically resulted in a deluge of false positives and false negatives, and a high volume of low fidelity alerts generated by obsolete security controls. A recent survey of CISOs reported that over 41% see more than 10,000 alerts, and some even claim to see as many as 500,000 a day. It just seems like an astronomical amount. And factors implicated in generation of false alerts might include a lack of context in the alert generation process, a lack of ability to consolidate some of the alerts, and an overall increase in security controls and numbers of tools being used. A lot of businesses are using more than one tool. We've seen some recent data that does support that. So this overwhelming level of noise in the alert process really just clutters up dashboards and distracts attention from legitimate detection of potentially malicious activity. And this can result in constant firefighting, often meaning that developers and development teams are relying on a bevy of tools to simply decide if an alert should be escalated. In essence, there really isn't a clear plan that is being followed as to the prioritization of these issues, or the validation of them as being severe. So these labor-intensive manual steps really just drive down efficiency and contribute to high stress levels. Respondents to another survey by Enterprise Management Associates noted that 52% of threat alerts are improperly prioritized by systems and must be manually reprioritized, with an underlying cause being a lack of context, such as the financial impact of an asset if an asset was in fact compromised. So there really does need to be this reframing of some of these alerts and a full understanding of what the specific business wants to address, what is a priority to them, where do they have resources, what sort of costs can they afford, and does it make sense from a return on investment perspective. And alert fatigue has really just become a huge factor for security teams, and more than half of these teams are requiring manual reprioritization, which consumes valuable time, while also increasing the risk of a potential compromise because, again, there isn't that visibility, things aren't being tracked to the same level. So next, let's look at how AppSec automation can improve efficiency and cost. Automating security when and where possible helps to reduce costs, from improvements in productivity to being able to have fewer security analysts. Without automated detection and prevention workflows, organizations must dedicate hard-to-find security analysts to manually review alerts and enact the necessary remediations that would be associated with those alerts. And with the volume of security alerts that has been spiraling out of control, as we just mentioned, and traditional AppSec approaches incurring huge numbers of false positives, the drain on productivity can quickly compile into higher costs and increased inefficiencies. The area where the bulk of time is spent by security analysts is actually in the remediation stage, which often requires numerous hours of development teams due to the analysis needed, the triaging, reporting, and retesting process. In contrast, instrumentation that automates these workflows and processes can eliminate some of those false positives, minimize the alerts, and really just highlight those that really matter to the specific business based on what their priority list includes. As automation enables security teams to discover and remediate vulnerabilities earlier in the software development lifecycle, even sometimes before code is even checked in, the time to remediate can thus be reduced dramatically. A report by ESG discovered that 42% of cybersecurity teams ignore a significant number of security alerts because they just can't keep up with the volume. So if these alerts aren't being monitored, if they're not being prioritized, if there isn't a clear process in place, businesses are really just opening themselves up to risk and losing the opportunity to remediate some of these challenges much earlier in the development process. And then moving on to the final reason that AppSec is essential is improving speed and convenience. So as businesses continue to place even more demands on software developers for rapid innovation and delivery for their applications, automation has become a key driver of success. Automation can actually help shorten those feedback loops by delivering instantaneous security feedback to developers within their native tools and their development environments, and as far left of the application development cycle as possible, which really has become a primary objective for DevOps teams. Vulnerabilities can be continuously and automatically discovered as the developers work, which would be accompanied by code-level actionable remediation guidance. And this enables developers to remain focused on code development and meeting time-to-market objectives. Indeed, the automation of AppSec processes can drive down mean time to remediation by as much as 70%. Other areas where AppSec teams can see time reductions include incident investigation, implementing fixes, and then retesting to confirm fixes have been completed. Automation of AppSec workflows and processes can reduce mean time to remediation by as much as 70%. Enabling developers to remain focused on coding while improving organizational risk. So that wraps up that section. Now we're going to discuss the role of AppSec automation in really just increasing the efficiency, reducing the cost, and enabling and empowering development teams to continue to improve their applications. I'm just going to take a quick drink of water, sorry. Traditional application security really just can't keep up. While many businesses have worked to remediate the application vulnerabilities that exist within most business applications, they still have not been able to keep up with the ever-changing landscape that is the application attack surface. If we look at average vulnerabilities per application as a marker of this, we find that this actually hasn't changed at all from 2000, staying at an average of 26.7 vulnerabilities per application. So the fact of the matter really just becomes that traditional scan and perimeter-based security models can't keep up with the sheer number of lines of code being developed, which is a primary reason why application code breaches remain the #1 threat to application security. Businesses are constantly seeking to enhance and expand applications further, requiring developers to constantly churn out new code, exacerbating challenges from the security perspective. Additionally, open source code is now used so frequently, and if it's not managed or patched, it can introduce vulnerabilities into the development environment. And with the number of breaches tied to open source code increasing to 71% over a recent 5-year time frame, we're really starting to observe that and notice how prevalent it has become. Traditional AppSec approaches just can't scale to cover the breadth and depth of this new application development reality. And this is where instrumentation can help, and distinguishing between benign and malicious behavior, as well as enabling automated and accurate detection within the applications and the development environments themselves to provide relevant context, visibility, and understanding of some of those challenges and vulnerabilities. So moving on to the role and the importance of trust building. Application security has many organizations concerned, and rightfully so. However, there are steps that organizations can take to mitigate some of the more critical threats. Application breaches continue to be on the rise. Through 2021, we have seen an explosion of attacks, and it's really unlikely that this will reduce anytime soon. Applications now just provide so much value to customers and clients across the operational spectrum that they also provide huge potential profits to those that wish to use them for malicious activity. And as a result, these applications are now more open to risk than they ever have been. And as we dive deeper into the situation, this only becomes more dire. Let's consider these findings from a recent study of 1,400 IT and security practitioners. 75% of organizations have likely, most likely, or definitely experienced a material cyber attack in the last year due to a compromised application. 64% of IT pros are concerned or very concerned that their organizations will be hacked via an application. 54% expect the severity of the threats to their organizations to increase, and only 25% of IT practitioners say their organization is making significant investments in solutions that will prevent application attacks. So what can you do to build more trust with application security? Moving towards zero trust is absolutely critical for businesses that are looking to upgrade their safety, security, and trust within their applications. The high level of scrutiny placed on applications helps to offset the concurrent risks generated by integration of third-party applications and code. And there are a few key steps that businesses can take to boost AppSec and move towards zero trust. So this would start with securing APIs. Anything that exposes an application to potential malicious access is fair game for attackers, and that includes APIs, even though their attack surfaces can be tightly restricted. Security for APIs can often be overlooked in manual approaches, and when then used to dynamically generate content on a website, you generally only intend to use those APIs yourself. So security can sometimes be lacking, and often they're not included within the scrutiny within that development process, so they can be missed. And Scott Crawford recently said that we've seen a large increase in hackers exploiting internal APIs that web apps use. That's just as important as security for other aspects of applications. And he's definitely right. Mobile APIs were also targeted by hackers who use malware to hijack a mobile device or steal credentials. Once they access the API, they use it to scrape data from their target, and that's obviously valuable for them as well. So APIs really need to be evaluated with an eye to what access to sensitive data and resources they're exposing. So it's critical that that is included within the overall AppSec approach, and preferably from an automated perspective. Additionally, it's very important to continue to shift security left. So moving security earlier in the development lifecycle is another way to improve an application security environment, and that's because security issues often appear first in the application's code. So the earlier these issues can be discovered, the more secure the app will be in the long run. And it also lowers the cost of protecting the app because it costs less to catch flaws early in the process than when software is about to be deployed. It's often not possible to protect or detect application attacks with a network security solution. That is why it's important to reduce the number of vulnerabilities in an application during the development process. We can even go as far to assert that it's critical to implement automated code security at the point of software development. And by doing that, security is integrated at the point of software creation. This shift left approach can be a resource intensive approach, but with automation, it can be a plausible reality for even small or medium-sized enterprises. Securing code is only one part of the challenge. Application security really requires a layered approach, starting with creating secure apps, managing those apps in the enterprise, and then protecting the code from reverse engineering, as well as protecting and monitoring the systems those apps interact with. So ultimately, it's a holistic process, but it really does start from the beginning, and creating automated approaches that can be integrated directly into the development process really does help to remediate some of the risk and a few of the challenges that can be opened up by application vulnerabilities. We also need to focus on identifying dependencies. The growth in the use of third-party components within applications has increased the risk of application compromise. These days, because of the complexity involved in an application, there's just so much happening that you can't write all of the code yourself. There's also just so many open source projects that can reduce your time to market and reduce the expense of development. To get a handle on those third-party risks, organizations need to gain visibility into what open source components are used by their applications and also how they're used. This can be done through the use of software composition analysis tools, and we really expect to see continued adoption of software composition analysis for the next several months as a mitigating step against the risks of obsolete or vulnerable third-party code, and certainly the use of automation within this regard will definitely increase as well. And then finally, it's very important to stay vigilant, and this happens in the form of scanning consistently for vulnerabilities. A number of tools and service firms will test code for errors before it's deployed, and these scans can reveal common flaws such as cross-site scripting vulnerabilities, as an example. But organizations really need to demand that software applications either built or bought by their organization be tested for vulnerabilities long before they're released. Observed applications must be subjected to both static application security testing performed on the source code, as well as some form of penetration testing. And this helps to identify any prospective risks and assures that you have awareness, visibility, and remediation steps way before the deployment occurs. Organizations should also require that software suppliers demonstrate proof that the application being delivered has been adequately tested for security weaknesses. This will help to prevent any unnecessary risks, and if this isn't done, it does need to be scanned and validated when it gets in-house, basically. There's an attitude that only the most critical apps need to be tested, but this is somewhat narrow-minded. Applications of all types can be open to vulnerabilities. This includes those that have been deprecated, very simple applications that might only serve one function. So it's critical to stay vigilant and consistently scan for vulnerabilities across all applications that you are using as often as possible. So how can you automate static application security testing? A DevOps pipeline needs to operate in a convenient, controlled approach, enabling rapid deployment and easy communication. Manual testing, as a result, can become a point of friction that slows down the entire process. So test automation is essential, for an efficient DevOps pipeline. A DevOps suite should include a combination of automated tests, including unit tests of new functionality, API integration tests, and critical use case tests as well. The focus on quality and collaborating in a DevOps culture facilitates testing activities and enables a smooth process. But testing should operate throughout the DevOps lifecycle, such as requirements testing, code walkthroughs, time-boxed exploratory sessions, UI, UX testing, and definitely security testing as well. Businesses are, really working hard in order to keep their promises of faster updates and bug fixes, but they're also constantly under pressure to accelerate their development cycles. And this calls for swiftly implementing security parameters as well. Conventional testing methods are simply not suitable for dynamic application development and delivery. Their feedback cycles are long, and it generally takes much more time to make continuous changes to products. So as far as the speed of delivery and scale are concerned, age-old methods of cybersecurity have been failing to some degree. So automated testing is really the answer here to mitigate some of those challenges. Some researchers believe that in the upcoming years, IT companies may have to release updates as much as 120 times a year. And to support such delivery times, automation of application security absolutely becomes a must. Perfectly integrated into the software development lifecycle, automated security tests can assist developers to act fast and handle vulnerabilities very efficiently. Mature businesses are already doing it, and they're seeing great results. Recent research shows that 57% of the organizations which follow mature DevOps practices have already automated as many security processes as possible for them. Not only does this help them with speed and scale, but it also helps them with strict regulatory compliances like GDPR and HIPAA. So now that we understand why it's necessary to automate security, let's dive into some of the best methods for automating application security at a high level. Using high-quality application security tools. Kiuwan Code Security is a primary example of an application security tool that empowers developers to integrate testing into their process. Kiuwan provides the benefits of ease of use, speed, and instant feedback, going even further to provide concrete directions on how to remediate issues and the best options for securing usability of the applications and their contained code. Integrate into your development process. Integrating methods like software composition analysis and quality assurance tools into the development process may also be a big help. They can automate the process of bug detection as the code is being compiled and provide full analysis of any open source components that might be in use and their associated risks. Staying proactive with threat intelligence. As you mature in terms of security automation, you'll inevitably avoid the mistakes of the past. In simpler words, it would be better if you figure out generic vulnerabilities and accordingly put your security patterns in place. And this can help you to prevent security incidents in the future and continue to learn more about the risks that might be associated with your applications. Automate open source components. Open source components continue to play a substantial role in any software development process. They might be free, but developers have to go through a lot to check for vulnerabilities within them. So with the help of automated tools, developers can easily keep track of open source components, allowing them to implement new functionality from code with ease while limiting risk. Moving towards DevSecops. DevSecops is an addition to the existing DevOps methodology of project execution. In DevSecops, security testing is integrated into the development cycle in the early phases itself. This adds and automates security testing to the DevOps process, not only helping you to push ahead of your competitors, but also save your critical resources and build more secure applications. With Kiuwan, you can automate static application security testing, SCA and QA from directly within your pipeline, allowing easy validation without ever having to leave your development environment. So let's evaluate the full range of solutions that Kiuwan can provide for development teams. A code weakness or misconfiguration within an application can cause a vulnerability that can be leveraged by hackers to launch an attack. This can have a lot of serious consequences for businesses, including loss of application control, loss of control of a hosting server, customer data theft, and brand and website damage. Recent cyber breaches have cost companies millions of dollars, not including damage to the brand's reputations and partnerships. Discovering application vulnerabilities early and maintaining strong security practices is now crucial more than ever. Kiuwan is an industry-leading platform that's designed to secure development operations at every stage of the pipeline. The platform leverages effective static application security testing and software composition analysis to identify vulnerabilities and provide targeted remediations to help you secure your code. Focusing on 3 key attributes that really help your development team. Complying with security standards. With Kiuwan, you can stay aligned with security standards, scan your code using a set of 4,000 or more rules that are based on industry standards. And Kiuwan also supports all common programming languages to ensure complete application security. You can also integrate with your pipeline. Kiuwan Code Security fits seamlessly into your CI toolchain to add application vulnerability scanning directly into your development pipeline. You can identify vulnerabilities early in the application lifecycle and easily remediate very quickly. You can also manage your open source risk by automating tracking of open source components that are used within your applications. You can discover if your application code is exposed to risk from any known vulnerabilities, obsolete versions, and licensing issues. So that wraps up today's presentation. I'm now available to take any questions that you might have, so go ahead and submit them in the questions. And if you don't have any questions or you would just like to follow up to get more information, feel free to email us at contact@kiuwan.com. I'm going to stay on here for about 5 more minutes, so please go ahead and field any questions that you might have. Thank you for joining today.